Coach, I guess just a general question. Where kind of give us a schedule of where y'all are practice-wise and what the next step is and preseason and all that.
So we have 8 weeks in the summer that you can be on the floor with the guys. You're limited with the hours per the NCAA guidelines. But because of not having everybody here in June, it was more individual skill development, not more, all individual skill development. We didn't do anything physically in terms of competition. And then once we got into the second half or the last 4 weeks, when we had some more guys arrive on campus, we started putting in some general schemes, kind of introducing some things that we'll do both on the offense and defensive end. So we had a couple handfuls of practices of the shorter variety over those 4 weeks, while still, doing some skill development within the practice that we did daily. And then they all are just getting back from break with school beginning on Wednesday. They're all trickling back into town, and they got some responsibilities the next couple of days before we get back going on Wednesday.
You saw the announcement with the neutral site game with Drake today. How close is that scheduled to being wrapped up outside of the SEC announcing their dates?
Yeah, we're done other than getting some contracts signed, routed through campuses. That's all we're waiting on. And obviously, if nothing goes awry, we know dates and opponents, et cetera, and we're just waiting to be able to release it to the public. And but I'm sure it's going to be days now. Hopefully, real soon we'll be able to release that schedule.
Go ahead, Theo.
I know it's hard to assess when you talked about, it's kind of all individual skill development, but what do you think of the roster you're putting together for this year?
We're a work in progress, like probably most teams across the country, but I've been impressed with their coachability. They've had great demeanors, great approaches, great attitudes from the jump, and that was, you just never know, when you're piecemealing a team together in your first year with some returnees, and obviously signing new guys to the program all summer long. So that's what stuck out the most is, they listened well, they were about it, they bought in. Certainly we're just, dipping our toes in the shallow water right now, and it'll ramp up as we get going again here in the fall. And then certainly when we get to the 42 days out from the first game, when you can, really go full throttle with practice and training, et cetera. But I thought we had a pretty good summer considering, where we're at roster-wise.
Steph, to coach's left.
Yeah, going back to the non-conference that you were talking about there, I guess, you've been at programs before where you've had kind of, a new team that you're trying to mesh at the start of the year. I guess, how do you assess, what you're looking for in that non-conference slate while also, trying to get wins, because you got, a pretty tough slate, at least from first look?
I think we have a pretty aggressive non-conference schedule, how it has unfolded. And there's always factors in play when you're putting it together, but my plan will always be to challenge our guys in the fall, for a number of different reasons. One, the obvious, to prepare for, the daunting SEC schedule. But at the same time, you've got to always be thinking about at-large possibilities and putting your team in the best position to where you have opportunities, to beat people that are the, higher net teams, the quadrants, et cetera. So I think it's a balancing act of challenging your team and putting them in that type of position and preparing them for the SEC schedule.
Danny P., go ahead.
Coach, it's been roughly 4.5 months now.
Almost 5.
Almost 5, yeah. Just talk about Starkville since you've been here. How's it been for you, adjusting? Getting adjusted to new surroundings, I guess.
Yeah, other than the humidity, it's been great. To be honest with you, that's been my biggest adjustment, and I will say that I think my body is starting to get a little more accustomed to it. But where I come from is completely different climate other than the high temperatures are very similar, but how it feels are completely different. And that's been our biggest adjustment. But the city's been awesome. They've welcomed us with open arms. Sherry and I have already had the opportunity to meet a bunch of folks in the community and start building, relationships and friendships that hopefully will last forever. And people are prideful of their Bulldogs and love being at a place where it means so much to so many. And obviously looking forward to the fall and football and being a part of the pageantry of FCC football and being able to watch high level games that we'll be seeing here real soon.
We'll stay on the front row and then we'll go to Brian behind him.
Obviously, you bring a lot of new pieces into this year's team. So how big is it to bring guys like Tolu, DJ, Shaq, guys that were here to kind of help mesh that new group together?
Yeah, it was critical. First thing that we talked about when we arrived is there was nothing more important than recruiting the guys that we inherited and evaluating them at the same time, because sometimes people and kids forget this. It's a two-way street. We're coming in here to evaluate them as players and people, and just as they are us when we had all those initial discussions and conversations with the guys, and then certainly their mentors and family members that are involved in their decision-making process. So, when the dust settled, I felt really good about the guys that elected to come back and continue their careers here. And but it was crucial, especially to get the guys that you mentioned that were critical players for last year's team, or in some cases even before that. So we're really glad that they stayed, and hopefully they feel the same way. And certainly we got a lot of work to do.
Brian, go ahead.
Coach, how different is the recruiting pitch for a first-year coach versus a situation where you've been here for a number of years? How different is what you tell recruits here what it would have been if you had stayed in New Mexico State?
Yeah, it's a different sell. I think I don't know if it's going to be different in year 2, year 3. We'll have to wait and see. But certainly, each college and each program has their positives that they're extenuating in the recruiting process, and we're no different. And I think being new, there is something special about it. You can come in with a new coach, a new energy, a new staff, and it's not the same old, same old. And the other thing, just being frank with you, is with the landscape of college basketball, like, hey, we're gonna be here, for the short term, and you're gonna play for us, and you ain't got to worry about, a coaching change, and you go to places where they're in the middle of their tenure. That's something that you have to think about when you're making decisions. So it's something that we've talked about with potential players, recruits, but certainly everyone in this league is going to harp on the league and the draft picks and the type of competition you're going to be playing against, the type of fan bases that you're going to play in front of and against, and just how successful the league has been with getting players into the next level. And so we're trying to accentuate the positives and certainly sell them on our vision that we have for this program. And so far so good.
Paul, go ahead with the follow-up.
Kind of not so much an injury update, but just the status of where Tolu and Keyshawn are right now, and as far as what they're able to do on the court.
Yeah, Tolu's had no, backwards information. It's all been good. He's had a checkup in the last few weeks where they went in there and looked at it to make sure it healed properly, et cetera. And all the feedback that we've gotten has been really, really positive. Keyshawn had, he participated fully this summer. Unfortunately, this will be new news. He has recently had an injury to his shoulder that will not require surgery, but it will require him to take a few weeks off before he is be released to full-time activities.
Theo?
Yeah, you've obviously seen the growth of the transfer portal in college basketball while you're trying to rebuild a brand new roster almost. What was that like, that experience dealing with the transfer portal when you had so many spots to fill?
Yeah, it's nonstop. Guys are literally refreshing the transfer portal at the height of it because people are jumping in it so quickly, and you had to, try to be on top of it, and you could literally be behind if you weren't contacting that person or his people, within 24 hours of entering the portal. So it was an hourly deal, again, at the height of it, where you're staying abreast of who's available and who you can start recruiting. And some of them, those processes they're more sprints now than they are marathons. There's more sprint recruiting than there are marathon recruiting. And, it's been documented and talked about and wrote about. I mean, we're very comfortable in that space. With most of my staff had been in junior college and signing big classes. It's not that new for us. And then even at New Mexico State, we took a lot of older kids, junior college players, transfers, and did a lot of sprint recruiting there too. So we hit the ground running when it comes to that. But it definitely is certainly different than it used to be.
Steph, go ahead.
Do you have any idea on kind of the timeline of that last scholarship spot? Is that still something you're eyeing to fill? You think you can fill before the season starts?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're still out there, looking underneath every stone, turning over every rock. And at this point today, I don't know what the percentage would be, but there's a possibility that we'll still extend that scholarship and hopefully have that person accept it or not. It's not a deal where we're just going to use it. If we don't find someone that we think can help us immediately, or with some upside growth type of deal, development because of his game and where he's at, how he's built, and all those things that go into future projections that can help us in the near future. If we don't find that person, and we may end up keeping it and looking at having one at Christmas and being able to bring in someone then, and we may not then either. I don't know, but everything's on the table right now. I think ideally we'd like to use it, and it just hasn't worked out yet.
Go ahead.
Just kind of sticking with recruiting, you kind of been here the whole summer, your first off season. What kind of new opportunities has recruiting presented to you being in the SEC compared to some of your previous stops?
It's just familiarity, name recognition, program recognition. You're not having to take any time at all to explain, what league you're in or who the members are of your league, or, who you are for that matter. So just having more of a recognizable name in the industry, and it carries obviously a little more weight than most of the places that I've been at.
Brian, go ahead.
Sort of piggybacking off of Steph's question there, if you had a choice, if I gave you a preference between a guy who could help you this year with that last roster spot, or a guy that, like you said, you could develop and maybe help you a couple years down the road, which would you prefer?
Right now, without hesitation. I like to have, every chamber loaded, if you will, and just like to have options. I like to have options, and I like to have competition up and down the roster in practice. I think it just makes everyone better. You continue to push each other every day. When you got a big difference in talent and productivity at numerous spots, then I don't think it's good to raise people's games and elevate, their compete level. So if I had my druthers, definitely would get someone that would have the ability to help us right now. And I think that's going to be, for the most part, our approach, in recruiting all the time is, not that we're not going to sign any kids that have that big upside, because hopefully we will, but more so we're looking for guys of, how can they help move the needle right now? And with the portal and what's going on, I mean, there's going to be more opportunities for that.
Go back to Paul. Got time for a couple more.
Obviously, you guys and your staff scouted a bunch of these transfers. You even recruited some of them in JUCO, so you had a pretty good handle of what they bring to the table. When you look at Deshaun and Eric Reed and Orton and Tyler Stevenson and those guys, have any of them kind of surprised you in practice, what you've been able to see, or has anything kind of stood out about those guys that you didn't already know?
Other than what I said about their approaches, I've just been real impressed with the their approach. And what I mean by that is just understanding that, there's a time for work and time for play. And when we huddle up and blow the whistle, like, that's the time to work. And they've been great that way. They've worked, they've had good attitudes, good approaches, just learning to understand the expectations that we have on a daily basis for how we want to play. And we've gotten off to a good start. And again, it's going to be a different feel, I think, as we'll have new guys, to the mix. We had new guys after June. We're going to have new guys now. And so, that changes the chemistry and the makeup of our team. So there's always going to be adjustments. And but if I had to single anyone out, I would say that, Deshaun Davis has impressed us thus far. I think he's got a chance to be a really good defender, and the position he plays is crucial for how we like to play. And certainly we have a long way to go, as does he. But I think that's probably what stood out to me the most, and of not really knowing it or being a little bit surprised by it, is his ability to defend on the ball and be a little disruptive out there on that end of the floor.
Anything else for Coach before we let him go?
I got one last one.
Paul, and then Theo will wrap us up.
You, obviously, I know it's kind of a timing deal, and you mentioned this at your opening press conference. It was kind of a factor in your decision, but being the first coach to be in a new revamped Humphrey Coliseum, I know obviously you're busy, ready to get that team out there and get them together, but in the back of your mind, how excited are you to see those new changes out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome. I was telling Matt when I walked down, I haven't been down in here in a while. With the construction going on, it's just the way it is. I actually I tried not to lose my focus during the day and watch the gentlemen moving the earth and the buildings. And once in a while, I have a little bit of that in me because they're banging something, and I think it's thunder and lightning, and it's just we're under construction, and we have those moments. We've had those moments throughout the summer, and but I got a bird's eye view of the work that's being done, and they are working. I mean, they are getting stuff done, and it's nonstop, and they're not messing around. And I find myself saying, don't get distracted, man, because it's right there out my window. I can see them on the outside and doing what they do. But it's exciting. I mean, it's certainly a big, getting back to the recruiting question, obviously a big sell for us. And the pictures and the videos that we have access to are really cool, and they've done a good job with that kind of stuff. And the kids and the parents and people that have come through here and that we've been able to share it with, get pretty wide-eyed when we show them.
Theo, go ahead and wrap us up.
Sure. This Mississippi State team struggled a lot from three-point range last year. How much do you focus on that when building a roster, and how prepared do you think this roster is to improve on that?
Yeah, I've been made well aware of that a number of times since I've arrived, and we'll see. We got a lot of work to do, and I think most teams probably always feel like they'd want more. And I'm no different. I would love to have more scorers, more shooters, more guys that can create. I mean, I don't think I'll ever, when you ask me recruiting questions, oh yeah, I mean, I'm satisfied. I mean, it's just not how we're built. And so we'll see. I mean, I think that's, not getting too ahead of ourselves here, but it definitely will be a key to our success is how well we shoot the basketball. And I would say that most teams would probably, if you had to categorize what people say or coaches say when they talk about the keys to their success, it's usually one of them, and we'll be no different this year.